Hey everybody, welcome. We are live as you're jumping on here. If you're hearing me right now, it's probably because you're watching this as a replay, but welcome to you all the same. Excited to be back on here for our weekly power session. For those of you watching this for the first time, I'm here every week on Tuesdays at 12 o'clock Mountain Time to provide essentially what is a free coaching session. Now, people used to have to make significant investments to be able to participate in these power sessions that originated as something we could provide to our clients after some very intense personal coaching to keep them plugged in and to keep them progressing and keep these principles sharp and the support needed to create and sustain the habits that create our success. But now in 2019, we've made a decision to make sure that our broader community, that this is a major give back for the people that follow Mandino, that are a part of the Habit Finder Institute, that coach with us. So super excited for you all to be here. Hey, Chris, welcome. Glad you're back. Yeah, we were at the, my father and I, who's the founder of our company, I'm the president and run operations. We were at an event in Los Angeles at the end of last week for 3.5 days with none other than Bob Proctor, who is an incredible individual. Had the opportunity to interact with him in the past. My father spoke with him at an event as well. He had an office right across the hall from Og Mandino, and got to hear some fantastic stories in the past about him and Og. So super cool, fun to be back with him at that event. The Art of Goal Creation was the event. It was so many great things. For those of you that follow me directly on Facebook, there was a quote shared, and I just had the card here a second ago. What did I do with it? I think it might have fallen. Here it is. That I posted. For those of you that follow me personally, I just posted this quote on my timeline that I absolutely loved. It says, "All men dream, but not equally. Those who dream by night in the dusty recesses of their mind wake in the day to find that it was vanity. But the dreamers of the day are dangerous men, for they may act their dreams with open eyes to make it possible. This I did." So just love that idea of dreaming, in the recesses of your mind at night when you're away from the action, and being present in the now and what you want to create, and then being able to learn to be a dreamer as well. Synonymous with being a creator in the day, and being able to do that. So now we've got some more people jumping on here. So without further ado, I will provide my typical sign on of we're live. So excited to be here with you guys. Give me just 2 seconds. I want to make sure that the people who are following me on my own page get an opportunity to know that we've started. So let me jump on to this page on my phone and share it to my personal page. So bear with me. And as I'm doing this, please share this to your page. Hit share. Those of you that have been on here or been a part of our Habit Finder Academy for the last several years in these power sessions, you already know the value that we're going to be dropping today. So please take an opportunity to share this. Give me just 1 sec. Jump on and join us. Get this shared out and done. Excellent. Very good. So super excited to be with you today. Last week in review, and real quick, a couple ground rules. Let me get this out of the way super fast. I've got my chat right here. I can see who's jumping on. I can see who's asking questions. Please, this is an interactive session. Power sessions have always been interactive sessions. This is not an opportunity for me to jump up here and lecture you. Now, as we established last week, if I start losing you, things start flying over your head, the safe word is tabs, okay? Thank you to Miriam Khan for giving us that reference, that you say tabs, and that's my cue to know that I need to center it. I need to bring us back to the simple principles that we're focused on that are actually going to move your business forward, your relationship to another level, take your health and vitality to a greater level of intentionality. That's really what these principles that we teach here create. Now, you can jump back to last week and hear about why we focus on habits of thinking. Simply put, because they're as far upstream as you can get in terms of your reality, in terms of the decisions that you make and the emotions that you feel and essentially the results that you create, they all start as far upstream as you can get in your thoughts. And thoughts have their power when they have patterns, when they have habits, thus thinking habits or habits of thinking, which we have spent several $1 million over the last 19 years creating and honing and perfecting a technology called the Habit Finder profile that gives us an opportunity to measure exactly what's going on up here when it comes to the patterns of your thoughts. You've got 85,000 of them a day, conscious thoughts, and another few million unconscious thoughts. And that's probably the reason why there are about 6.4 quadrillion variables. There are about 6.4 quadrillion variables in what the Habit Finder profile can measure. So this gives you an opportunity to be able to see objectively, just like you would if you were having heart issues and you got an EKG. It gives you an opportunity to see what's going on in your thought processes with laser accuracy. Now, last week we talked about how to have a conversation with self, with your intrinsic self. And we talked about there are 3 characters involved in this conversation. There's your true self, your enthos hectic, your authentic true self. That's who you really are. For those of you familiar with the Habit Finder, when the bar moves to the right or to the left, it's identifying risk. And we want to be able to explore how that risk is showing up or where we might be compensating for it. It's not about it being bad. It's about increasing our awareness in that area. But you'll notice every bar starts in the green. That's your true self. That's why when you click on any of the measurements, the first thing you read in that pop-up, it says the objective. That's your true self. That's why it always starts with when we're being our true self, when we're being our best self. That's typically how all of those descriptions start. That's your true self. That's one of the characters in this conversation. The other is going to be our future self. This is the person we are becoming, which is who we already are. We don't change. We don't become someone different. We reveal more of who we already are. We get more access to our being. We know this to be mathematically correct, that there's nothing wrong with you. Okay? There are no weaknesses that you have. When it comes to your thoughts that create your emotions, that then create your actions, there are no weaknesses when we get to this far upstream. What we find is that we have strengths that can get out of control. Something that you'll want to understand as you approach 2019 is that anything that you feel like you want to fix or change about yourself is likely not something you're going to want to fix, but something you're going to want to understand. Because the majority, and I just say that to be safe, but what I really mean is all of the challenges that we have in our lives come from strengths, from great things that are out of balance or out of control. So we've got our current self, our true self, our future self, who we are becoming. We want to have a conversation with that person. We want to have a solid dialogue there because there's a third person trying to butt in, and that's our thoughts. Now, some thoughts support us. Those are the ones that are naturally in alignment with this conversation, the conversation between us and our future self. There are thoughts that are in congruence with that relationship. But there are plenty of thoughts for all of us, because we're all human, that are not congruent with that relationship, and they are biased to the current you. They're biased to your current framework, your current level of results, your current level of satisfaction, your current level of frustration, all of that. Your thoughts are biased to where you are at right now, okay? Ed Milet would refer to it as your thermostat. Your thoughts are biased to your current thermostat. If your thermostat's set at 72 degrees, which if we looked at the subtext would be your current level of discipline and your current level of awareness and therefore your current level of actions and results, if that's what your thermostat is set at, many of us are trying to turn on a fan to cool down the room, or open a door or a window, or light a fire to warm up the room, depending on what we're trying to accomplish with that thermostat. But if it's set at 72 degrees, as soon as we artificially do something that turns the temperature up or down in that room, as soon as it changes 1 degree, what does it do? What is the thermostat designed to do? It's not a temperature telling device. It's not so that you know what the temperature is. You do because it's got a digital display, but its core function is to make sure that it stays at that temperature. So if it goes from 72 to 73, boom, it immediately deploys countermeasures to get it back to 72 degrees. If you're trying to cool it off and it drops down to 70, but it's set at 72, boom, it will deploy countermeasures to get it back to 72. That is how a thermostat is designed. It's why it's one of my favorite analogies to our habits of thinking. Our habits of thinking are set on a thermostat. Habit Finder Profile tells us what is setting it at that thermostat. And if we're trying to do things to change the temperature, that's like turning on the fan or lighting the fire or opening the door or a window. We haven't actually changed the thermostat. Even though we can manipulate the temperature of the room for a short time, we find ourselves being victim to and surrendering to what Og called our habits of thinking that threaten to mark out our future, that imprison us in our future, because that's the thermostat. So we may enjoy 73, 75 degrees if we're trying to heat things up, or maybe what we're looking for in life is that peace and that calm, and so we're trying to cool things down. We may get down to 70, 68, and it feels great, but then the thermostat clicks, and it may take it a little while, but it won't stop until it gets you back to 72. And unfortunately, some of us have played this thermostat game so many times without actually changing our thermostat. We just change what we do, and what happens, just like a furnace, just like an air conditioner, it burns out. If we are constantly yo-yoing the temperature through doing rather than becoming, which is how you change the temperature of the thermostat, then we are at risk of burning it out. Let me scroll back down. Hey, Raul, I just realized I had the chat frozen. Let's see here. Miriam says, does that mean everyone's true self is the same at its core? Now, that depends on what you mean as the same. What is it the same extrinsically in terms of the natural strengths and the gifts? No. What it means is everyone is the same at their core in principle. That's one of the biggest reasons we teach a principle-based program. It's the only way to make an impact on thoughts. Without principles, then we're subject to what I love Og Mandino talked about in The Greatest Salesman in the World in Scroll 1, then we're subject to being like fashion, that it fades and goes in style and out of style, and what worked today won't work tomorrow if it's not principle-based. It was really fun to be at Bob Proctor's event this last weekend and hear him using different language than we use on some things, very similar language in other things, but in principle, we teach very much the same thing. I had several people come up to me who are familiar with what we do and said, what do you think of this? I could tell they were kind of like, do you agree with this? Because it doesn't quite sound the same as yours. For example, Bob uses fantasy in terms of imagination, which is a powerfully wonderful thing. Typically, when we're talking about fantasy, we're talking about escape and avoid. But the principle, fantasy for imagination, and using your gift of vivid visualization to actually build a worthy dream, the principles are exactly the same, the way Bob taught them and the way we teach them. So that's why we focus on principles. Principles are intrinsic. They can transcend wherever you're at. So I can teach, for example, one of the most powerful principles that we teach is intrinsic validation. This is a principle-based process for connection, the art of connection. And I can teach anyone intrinsic validation, no matter where they're at in their communication skills, whether they're introverted or extroverted. It will meet them where they are because it's based on principles. So we want to make sure we're building our mind, building our thoughts, building our habits with principles. Because as Og shared with us, and as it is universally true, only principles endure. And when you've got your reality, you've got your mind built on principles, okay? Just making sure I'm not missing any questions where we were before. Okay, good. I can scroll down to the bottom. If we're built on principles, then when the circumstances of our life changes, the challenges of our life changes, because they always do. You reach the next level, and there's a part of us that was anticipating that it would be easier now. No, it's not. In fact, usually getting your life to other levels on paper is harder, but we see people who are reaching higher levels, and our perception is that it seems to be easier for them. Well, in ratio to their ability and their responsibility, it seems easier because they are always outpacing their responsibility with their principle-based drive for ability. I'll repeat this because this is really important. When we see someone who life seems to be happening easier for, they're oftentimes the people that we want to model our lives by, and we've used very bastardized versions of what we think we're seeing. We think we're seeing time freedom. We think we're seeing financial freedom. That's not what we're seeing. Time freedom and financial freedom are two of the most dangerous goals that we can have, because the freedom that is actually being taught to the unconscious mind in that perception is an absence of resistance. So take gravity, for example. Gravity is a form of resistance. If we eliminated gravity in this world, one of the top problems, because this is what we run into early in the space program, one of the top problems would be the atrophy of our muscles. In other words, we would become weak, because strength comes from appropriate resistance. Now, if we're looking for financial freedom, time freedom, and we're training our unconscious mind to want an absence of resistance, we're wanting something that doesn't exist. We're wanting there to be no gravity on Earth. Well, sorry, but wrong planet. We've got gravity. And what's great, more so than any other planet in our solar system, we have an appropriate level of gravity. We have an appropriate level of gravity to be able to allow our ecosystem, to allow our existence to be able to live the way that it does. So to want to create a life that is universally incongruent, out of alignment with the way natural laws occur, you can see why we're getting frustrated. I want time freedom. I want financial freedom, but it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. What we can pursue with principles is time mastery and financial mastery. Because when we choose to engage time rather than try and escape from it, because that's really what we want. We want to escape from the laws of time. We want to escape from the laws of money. We want to be able to do whatever we want with our time and do whatever we want with our money. We're totally dishonoring the value that those two things bring in time and money. To waste them, to burn them. I mean, that's certainly not something that puts us in alignment with creation. So, coming back to what I was talking about with ability and responsibility, what we perceive is that someone who seems like they get to go wherever they want and do whatever they want, more often than not, it's because their ability is outpacing their responsibility. Ability grows, responsibility grows. Oftentimes in life, responsibility grows, and then we raise our ability to meet it. And then responsibility grows, and we raise our ability to meet it. If you know the principles of creating ever-increasing ability, which we teach, the reason we focus on thinking habits is because it's the key to the principles to ever-increasing ability, meaning your ability continues to compound. No matter how your circumstances change, no matter what opportunities you have, your ability is intrinsic. It's infinite. It goes on forever. You continue to tap into more and more of your ability, because stress, frustration, anxiety, the list can go on of the way we experience these things. The number one cause is our responsibility has outpaced our ability. That delta, that gap between our ability and our responsibility, the bigger it is, okay, the more challenging that those things, depression, anxiety, frustration, stress, okay, those things start pouring in. But why are we continuing to beat ourselves against that wall? Well, our ability may be here, but in our minds, we're dreaming about being able to match our responsibility. We're dreaming about having this much income and these things, and we're dreaming about how great life will be when. we want to have those dreams, but if those dreams are not driving ever increasing ability, then we aren't going to be able to rise to the occasion to match the responsibility. This is the equation for why lotteries are so destructive. You've got someone with this much ability, and we give them hundreds of millions of dollars, which requires, whether you like it or not, a very high level of responsibility, and they didn't earn that responsibility, but suddenly they're given it, like we might fantasize in our minds, and we haven't earned it. It's why this responsibility crushes this person, and why most people statistically end up worse than they started within 3 to 5 years after winning the lottery in a major prize. It's interesting. So let's pay closer attention in this conversation with us. Are we dreaming big to drive our desire for gaining ability? Or are we dreaming big to try and circumvent or shortcut responsibility? It's an interesting conversation. See, the reason we started last week about being able to have a conversation with you is because everything this year is going to come down to how well you can converse with you, with current you, future you, the thoughts that are constantly trying to butt their way into that conversation. If you're not clear on those three players and how to actually converse here, how to get leverage in this conversation with things like journaling, things like accountability partners, things like affirmations, things like asking yourself questions out loud, like we talked about last week. That ability is going to be underlying to the principles we'll focus on throughout these power sessions. Every week we're going to come back, and if you aren't feeling this is applicable, if you aren't feeling this is practical, it's likely because you haven't taken the stillness and the patience required to first hear this conversation and then be able to participate more intentionally in that conversation. Because then I'll teach you a new principle, and you're going to bring that principle into this conversation. And you're going to hear how your thoughts react to this conversation. You're going to get inspired by the future you that has mastered the habit of that principle. And then it's going to teach you, your future you is going to teach the current you how to get there and hold you more accountable. And the more real that conversation is, the more likely you are to achieve it. So if this is beyond reach for you, then good. You're in the right place. If this is going, then awesome. I'm glad you're here, because this could be the piece that you've been missing. We've worked with over 100,000 business leaders and entrepreneurs, and one of the most consistent themes is this. This is what I was missing. See, it's not us versus other methodologies that you've learned. No, we play very well in the sandbox of personal development, of developing you. I've had clients who have spent $60,000, $100,000, $200,000 on other gurus and other programs, and it's not, hey, you're finally going to spend your money in a good place. No, it's, hey, you're finally going to recoup that investment, because as we provide the principles, okay, we're going to be able to build the engine that can finally use that warehouse full of fuel that you've invested in with all these other programs. But now we're going to actually have an engine that can use the fuel. I mean, I've met people who have spent $100,000 on personal development fuel. Great programs, great information, great ideas on performance and all these different things and strategy and all this stuff. But until we get as far upstream as we can into our thinking habits, all we've got is a warehouse full of fuel and no combustible engine to actually drive it. Thinking habits. There's a reason why Og and other great minds of history have taught us that we are a slave to our habits, that our habits are the engine. No matter how high quality the fuel is, if we don't have the correct engine, we will go nowhere. So if you're feeling like a fish out of water, good. You're in the right place, because this is something that you're going to want to get familiar with. And there's only two things I ask of you to pull that off. Moments of stillness, and I say moments on purpose. For some of you, a moment may be 30, 45 minutes to an hour, where you have mastered the muscle for meditation and to be able to gain that awareness and find a comfortability in that. Others of you, a moment might be 30 seconds, 10 seconds. It's fine. It's what is your moment and how intentional it is. It's not how long it lasts. It's what it can do to you. It's how you feel it that matters. So moments of stillness is one thing I ask. And the second is patience. Have patience. If this is feeling like it's out of your stratosphere, have patience, okay? And just stick with me, and don't try and grab all of it. Don't try and grab everything that I talk about in these power sessions. There are several things that we'll talk about in here that we've found historically are next to impossible to be able to do without working one-on-one with a coach at a really deep level. But I promise you that those things are at very high levels of responsibility. So you're going to get a lot from this. And as you start finding yourself getting to the point where you're ready for that higher level of responsibility, we're ready to take you to that next level. But the majority of people who jump on these power sessions have plenty of room to grow with what we're talking about here. And in fact, there's nothing more fun than working with a personal client who has naturally propelled themselves to the level to start working with a coach. And there's steps in between that. We do some powerful group coaching, which is like this, except at a big scoop of personal coaching kind of atmosphere, where it's oftentimes me and another coach, me and my father a lot of times, or me and another coach or other coaches handling a group on a really personal level to drive these principles even deeper. Now, those are great for people that are starting to grab onto some of this and able to take it into their lives and see something happen, but maybe they're not quite able to sustain it, or they're running into a blind spot that even with focusing on the simplicity of what we're doing here, not quite able to overcome, but you're achieving some level of progress. You felt what it is like to progress on this level, then it'd be great to consider a group or personal coaching. We do two types of groups. We do carpool groups, and we do specific groups where we're working within a specific company and everybody's from that same team or whatever the case is. And then carpool groups are groups of people that you may not necessarily know, but you're headed the same direction. You're in the same type of business. You have the same types of needs, and those can be really fun groups too, okay? So anyway, this is where we're at. I'm gonna hit a timeout, okay? I'm gonna tabs myself and take down, make sure I've got caught up on some of the comments that I've seen coming in here. Yes, looks like that thermostat analogy hit home. Awesome. Green on the Habit Finder assessment is your true self, definitely. What's the difference? Jill asked, what's the difference in our life between changing the temp and changing the thermostat? Can you explain more? Sure, let me revisit that really quick. The thermostat is set by who we are, which is a result of who we've become. So who we've become, our current level of awareness, and our current structure of our habits of thinking sets our thermostat. Now, we didn't get to that point by what we did. What we did was a natural outcome, oftentimes, of our environment and how intentional we were, or how intentional we weren't. It came from forces we weren't even conscious of, because our habits of thinking, our thoughts, never sleep. In fact, our unconscious thoughts and unconscious habits of thinking, where Og talked about they create our dreams and make us act in ways we do not comprehend, they never sleep. They've got hundreds of thousands of hours on us through our lifetime. And so what we want to do is become aware of those so that we can start to understand the infrastructure of our current thermostat. Then we can start changing it. What's really fun is someone's like, I feel like I'm living a 72-degree life, but I want to be living a 98-degree life. I want it to be hot, like in a good way, like awesome. And so they feel like they need to make a total renovation, a total revamp of their life. And the thermostat burns out and it sabotages them, and they're left broken and angry. Many of us don't realize that even 1 or 2 degrees shift in our life is a massive difference. A great leader I follow once said that small hinges swing big gates. And the thermostat, the degrees of your habits of thinking, can feel like small hinges. It's why we want to get out to the end of the gate and focus on the doing, but it's not sustainable. The doing is the sustained force of doing, the sustained action comes as a natural result of who we are, who we're becoming. So that's the difference. Changing the temperature is when we are obsessed with what we're doing. It's when, well, I don't know what to do, or I feel like I'm doing things and it's not showing up, or I need the right strategy, or I need a different system. There's a cycle we get stuck into. Well, this system didn't work for me, so I need to find a different system. And we reinvent the wheel, or we look for someone else to reinvent it for us. And we get so caught up on the system. And this, systems are phenomenal. But if you're having a hard time with the system, let's take a look at the common denominator here. It's likely you. So let's look inward. Let's understand how to change the thermostat. Because if we keep changing the temperature and then we blame the system, we blame what's outside of us, we're headed to disaster. We're headed to misery and frustration versus joy and creation. So hope that helps, Jill. It all boils down to discipline. It's a practice indeed. Falling in love with that, the D word. Let's see here. Full body yes. I love that, Melinda. Thanks. Whoosh. Dude, those conversations in my head are pretty rich. Sometimes they need their own talk show. Love that, Valerie. That's fantastic. I love that because Valerie brings up a great point. We're not listening to the conversation to indict it or to accuse it or assess whether it's good or bad. The only bad conversation going on is the one that we choose not to listen to, is the one that we ignore and pretend isn't there. Because then it wells up under the surface and sabotages us. Like if you want to be rich, no problem. You're going to want to have some principles ahead of that so that rich, for example, could become a natural outcome. But there's nothing wrong with wanting that. Most entrepreneurs run into the challenge of pretending they don't want to be rich, or they've been conditioned that they shouldn't want to be rich. Either way, and so we suppress it and we ignore it, even though the conversation's going on anyway, because there's some part of us unconsciously that wants to be rich. Well, let's tap into that and listen to it so we can use it. I can use wanting to be rich if someone is aware of it and they're clear about it. You can harness that. You can build the correct principles on top of it so that wanting to be rich doesn't trap you, but it can open you up and it can take you to new levels when built on correct principles. Because remember, being rich is an outcome. So it's not being rich guides our every move, but it can be a great tool for opening up possibility and dreams. Okay? And oftentimes that comes with permission to do so. So love Valerie's perspective on this conversation. It's not about being good or bad. It's oftentimes very entertaining when we can hear it, when we bring a funny bone to it and we don't beat ourselves up or judge ourselves for the conversation going on in our own head, because we're not the conversation. That's not us. But we're going to want to observe it and listen to it so that we can become the person that will create the natural results that we want to have. Is that thermostat the limbic? Same idea. Yes, Debbie, the thermostat at its core is in the limbic system, the lower brain, what people is oftentimes what it's referred to as the lower brain, the amygdala, the fight or flight center, the part of us that controls us and influences us with deep, strong feelings we don't necessarily understand because it doesn't have language. But in order for it to have been programmed that deep, came from thinking patterns, conscious and unconscious, repetition, feelings we assign to that repetition and feelings we assign to those thoughts. And then eventually it sinks down into something that no longer can explain itself. It's reactionary. And it's that part of the brain that makes us act in ways we do not comprehend, as it was stated in scroll 1. So you are correct. And it makes it really difficult to fight that battle if we're not willing to do what a lot of us would refer to as silly things. Like for example, we talk to our clients about waking up every day with the commitment out loud to want to and get to and choose to, rather than to have to and supposed to and must. And saying that, thinking that's one thing. It's okay. You might turn on a fan to try and cool down the room. But saying it out loud is what puts you in a leveraged or stronger position for that limbic area. Because remember, what it doesn't have, Debbie, is it doesn't have language. Now, language flying around in your mind is not the language we're talking about. We're talking about something that is alive, something that is constructed, and that's saying it out loud or writing it down. Great question. One of those, that 30 seconds is a long time for stillness. I'm not far off. Stasha, there are some days where that's all I can get is 30 seconds. What we want to be careful of is not creating this idea in our mind of Paul's talking about stillness and meditation. And so we start seeing in our mind us opening the day with this very powerful oneness, and we're going to tap into the universe and have our legs crossed in weird ways and our hands open to the energy of the universe. Please don't take offense if you're really deep into meditation. I'm talking about this fantasy that many of us with very active minds, which I know is over 90% of the people on here, have a challenge with. And so we ruin the 30 seconds because we didn't get 30 minutes. Let's stop doing that. Those 30 seconds can make an impact on 24 hours. You can decide whether that impact's going to be negative because it didn't meet your expectations, or you can decide that those were the most powerful 30 seconds that you've ever had and allow it to take who you're becoming today to a whole new level. So let's see here. Who's replying here? Oh, because you say we can control our thermostat. We cannot control our thermostat in the immediate. We don't just walk up to it and be able to hit the buttons. That takes time. It took time for it to get set there. It takes time to be able to shift it. We can influence it. And the greatest weapon, the greatest tool for influence of our thermostat is awareness and connection. Awareness being just what it sounds like, increasing our own awareness internally and externally, and connecting with others and ourselves. It's both on an external and internal level. Some people do better with one or the other from awareness or connection, or they'll do better with one or the other within awareness or connection themselves, either do better internally or do better externally. Okay. Yes, Norma, our paradigms. That's a term that was presented to me years ago in terms of shifting our paradigm or breaking the paradigm. It was around the time that 212 degree video was hugely popular and other motivational videos like that. And one of them that was circling around, very popular, talked about shifting your paradigm. So I love the term, and Bob Proctor uses it frequently. He refers to the construction of your unconscious mind that is holding you back, that is keeping you stuck, is your paradigm. We refer to that as your unhealthy habits of thinking. Bob talks about it beautifully in terms of understanding your relationship with your paradigm and what it tries to do to you when you try to grow. What's really fun is you go to the Habit Finder profile, and we will scientifically measure and roadmap what's really going on in that paradigm. So it's not about destroying it. It becomes about shifting it and changing it and managing it differently in terms of those habits of thinking. So Melinda, I get to wake up every morning at 6 a.m. so I can hang out with my mentorship and team and state my intentions for the day. It's a pretty amazing thing. That is awesome. Love that, because we have certain things built in that are really powerful for our growth, and one of those is community. Because none of us, it's why the first law, the first habit of success in the Habit Finder Institute is connection. That if we're not focused on connection, which creates community, and that's not necessarily your physical community you live in, that's one form of community. There can be community of intention, there can be community of beliefs, there can be community of support, there can be community of accountability. Community is being on a similar wavelength to people that you want to be on a similar wavelength with. And if Melinda, if you're getting together with people who care enough to connect to their own intention and then jump on a hangout to share that intention with others, that's a phenomenal community. Focused power hours with a timer set. Focused power hours with a timer set. Yeah. So power hours, So the term power sessions actually comes from something we teach in the third habit of success, which is physical creation. But it's one of the most powerful things that we teach, and it is a very focused and present and intentional amount of time that you're singularly focused. The challenge is we've become so convinced we can be focused on multiple things at multiple times, and neurologically it's impossible. But anyway, the philosophy of power sessions is the reason why I decided to call these sessions years ago power sessions, because it described exactly how I wanted this environment to be: totally present, totally focused, totally productive, to be able to take things further than they would just, lecturing and whatever. So Jerry asked connection with people and connection with self. So great opportunity at the timeout, because I talked about in today's session, we're going to be talking about the 3 pillars to 2019 success and beyond. We've alluded to almost all of them between last week and this week, but I want to make them very clear so you can hear when we're in which area, because they have a proper and correct order. The first pillar, the first priority, is dreaming. Number 1 is your dreams. Some of you might have a more practical term like your possibilities or your potential, but your dreams. That's what they are. We're built to dream as human beings. So number 1 is dreams. There's a whole subtext to dreams, and we'll talk about it constantly. We've already talked about quite a bit of it today and last week in terms of those dreams. That's when we're engaging the mind to just open up a world of possibility. One of the things talked about at the seminar I was at that I loved is, as Bob asked, why are we so obsessed with using logic and reason to accomplish the impossible? I'll ask that again. Why are we so obsessed with logic and reason to accomplish the impossible? That's why we start with dreams, because we want to be able to open up the possibilities and reach the impossible. Because every good thing in this world, every amazing accomplishment at one time or another was thought to be impossible by someone. Maybe even at times from all the people who actually accomplished it. But all of them, a prerequisite to achieving what was perceived as impossible to them or others was to dream, was to take their current reality and transport it to a place of impossibility, and to trust themselves enough to experience it enough that they can bring that experience back into their current reality and build it. And the next piece, the next pillar to being able to pull that off after we've dreamed, after we've created the dream, is decisions, to decide how to make courageous decisions. There's a whole sequence to that. We alluded to it just a little bit, I believe, last week. Decisions are based on who we are becoming, not what we're going to be doing. Many of us are living lives based on decisions of do rather than decisions of be. And when it's a decision of do, then we are naturally setting ourselves up to renegotiate and relitigate the do every day. Let me give you an example. I'm going to go to the gym every day. Okay? So that's your decision, but it's a decision based on a do. So every day I wake up to go to the gym, I am negotiating and litigating as to whether I want to do, whether I have the willpower to do the decision, versus I am deciding that by March 31st, 2019, I hope there's 31 days in March, otherwise that's going to sound really silly. I never remember the whole which months of the year, but we'll run with it. March 31st, 2019, I will have lost 25 pounds, for example, okay, or whatever it is. And so suddenly going to the gym every day is the action, one of the actions that will support that decision. So when I wake up in the morning, there's no negotiation about whether I'm going to the gym. I already made a decision that I was going to be 25 pounds down in 2.5 months. I already made that decision. There's no renegotiation. Going to the gym is next. That's on the menu. There aren't any alternatives. But how clear were we about the decision to be there? And what dreams can be accomplished because of that decision? So dreams, decisions, then results. In the Habit Finder coaching program, there are 6 specific areas that drive results and sustain results. They also happen to be the 6 areas that we measure in the Habit Finder. And they are constructed in their mathematical functions in how to build on one another. And it always starts with connection. For practicality, sustainability, for being able to be on the right track, it always starts with connection. Then it moves into mental creation, which is how to take the dream we've created and bring it into your current reality and experience it at such a level that it gets distilled into the millimeters, the steps to be able to accomplish that big picture. Too many people take the big picture, then bring the big picture into their reality and choke on it. I'll say that again. Too many people take the big picture, the big dream, the big dream into their reality and choke on it. You're going to want to learn how to break it down, how to distill it, turn it into a concentrated formula for the millimeters and the steps to create it while keeping the big picture alive. You're not sacrificing that. That's what gives you the drive. That's what gives you the energy to go through that distilling process to bring it into your current reality. And then we can focus on the results. Now it's interesting. It's not dreams, decisions, action, because action can be deceptive. Very intentional about it being results. We're focusing on results. We are leading from our results. We are growing based on our results. Actions can deceive. Results tell the truth. Got to hear Helen Irwin, an incredible human being, talk about that she relies completely on results because they tell the truth. It is far more difficult to predict the results someone will get based on the actions that they tell you they're doing or that you're seeing them do, versus being able to predict the actions they're taking from the results that they have. The challenge is our brilliant minds, our very active minds, have become really good at justifying and rationalizing the results. We would rather verify the actions we took at the sacrifice of the results than admit that the results are a mirrored reflection of the actions we're actually taking. Here's one of the reasons why that's such a hard thing, is because actions happen on multiple levels. It's the actions of our intention. It's the actions of our energy. It's the actions of our focus. It's not just what we're actually physically doing. Our actions encompass all of these things. If you're familiar with the mathematics of the Habit Finder profile, it's the intrinsic actions, the extrinsic actions, and the systemic actions. That's not so you need to remember those terms, but just so you know, one of the reasons we have such a hard time when we're going, I'm doing everything, but I'm not getting the results, is because you may be doing the things, but in terms of action on all 3 levels, there's something or many things out of alignment. Here's a really, belligerent example. If I walk up to you and I tell you, okay, I want you to walk up to people like Og instructs in The Greatest Salesman in the World, scroll 2, and silently say to yourself, I love you. And then he gives us all these promises and guarantees if we'll do that, and what the impact it'll have on our facial expressions and neurologically in our brains and how they connect with other people, called mirror neurons, and all these great things. So the action, okay, the doing part of it is saying I love you silently to yourself. Well, what if I walk up to someone And I think silently to myself, like I'm walking up to you right now, I love you. Like that's literally how I heard it in my mind. Well, I did the action. I said silently to myself, I love you. But what's wrong with the picture? There are some other levels to the action that I didn't bring with me. And so if I don't get the results that Og was talking about in scroll 2 by saying silently to myself, I love you, it's not because the actions were wrong. It's because you just did it, but you didn't do it completely. You didn't encompass every level of the action. Is this making sense? Is this landing? Is this making sense, please? So dreams, number 1, seeing some questions. Thank you, Della. Dreams, decisions, results. Why number 3 is results is, well, 1, because that's what matters. Okay, results matter. They are the clear, unbiased, objective evidence that you are doing the dreaming part and the decisions part effectively. Because if you've done those 2 effectively, the actions become a natural result. But if we focus on the actions, then we spend all day debating with our results because we don't understand, because we've been taught a very surface level evaluation of our actions. But they're much deeper than that. Awesome. Okay, good. Woo! Okay. Yes. At the same time, it is what I said. That was an important action, but it was also how I said it, which through the study of language and body language and all that stuff is actually incredibly more important. But we don't learn the practicality. We don't learn the application of those principles if we're just relying on assessing our actions. We want to assess the results. We want to teach connection. We want to teach mental creation and using your mind constructively. We want to teach physical creation and disciplined thinking, enjoying the journey, and self-worth. We want to teach these 6 concrete habits of results. And we want to evaluate them based on the results we're getting. Because otherwise, the likelihood that we're taking things for granted by just evaluating our actions and being frustrated with the results, we're going to flip that. We're going to stop putting the cart before the horse, as they would say. So that's that. Whew. This was good. I just realized that the power session last week, I was wearing the same sweater. It's going to look like I did these on the same day and then just posted it. I'm wearing a different shirt, however. So anyway, I digress. We've got a couple of minutes for any questions or any feedback or verbal abuse. So I guess it wouldn't be verbal, it'd be comment abuse. So whatever you want, bring it on. I know there's a slight delay. Bravo, thank you. So I'll ask you a question, okay? Yeah. So yeah, we'll look like, I do have, my wife will tell you, I have 1, 2, 3 versions of this sweater, different colors. It's a Sonoma super soft fleece. It's my favorite sweater on the planet because it's actually big enough to fit me comfortably. I'm kind of a tall, large man. And so I ended up buying 3 of them. I was so pumped when I was willing to buy 3 of the same color, but I was so pumped to see other designs later on. So thanks for the mind blown. You're super welcome. I thought Paul does wear the same thing. How do you create healthy community without unhealthy competition? Ooh. I want to make sure I think this through a little bit. Crystal or Cristal? I would imagine it's Crystal. That's a great question. I'm a big fan of competition. As long as the community is committed to it being competing with our own potential and the interactions between us is supportive and accountability based. Are we committed to holding the person next to us accountable, not because I'm reaching more of my potential than they are, or they're reaching more of their potential than I am? No, but because we're committed to the community. I think competition's a powerful thing. We'll just want to be aware of what are we competing with? What are we competing with? That right there. Thank you. Thank you to me. Thank you to myself. You create healthy community by focusing on competition with, not competition against. Because I think competition is a great thing. I think it drives us beyond our comfort zone. I think it makes things fun. It gamifies what can be really taxing or really grinding or really difficult. Competition can be great, but it's the difference between it being competition against versus competition with. What are we in competition with? Number one should be our own personal potential. We're in competition with our unhealthy habits of thinking. Are we surrendering to them or are we controlling them? That's a great competition. And then that should drive the community. We're going to want to be really clear and transparent with each other and surround ourselves with a community that is not driven by me being better than you or me feeling inadequate because you're better than me. Because that's all perceptions based on unhealthy habits of thinking. That's all an external focus that doesn't serve us. That's an impact of our environment versus a connection to principles and our own goodness, our own competition. Tabs. Oh, can you repeat when actions become natural? Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Actions become a natural outcome, meaning this was done well, and as a natural result, I have this. Okay? For example, we don't make cars. We make a frame, we make components, we make all these things and construct them, and as a natural outcome, it's a car. This is kind of a foreign concept for some people, but stay with me. If we focus on creating dreams bigger than us and allowing them to actually come to life, and then being able to make a decision by distilling that dream down into who we are and who we will be in 30 days time, 90 days time, 6 months. I don't recommend it being longer than that. Okay. The bigger dream is probably a lifetime or 5 years or 20 years or whatever, or it's very aggressive and I'm going to 10x my income in a year. It could even be sped up. But when it comes to the decision, it's going to be something we can grab onto in our mind in terms of a time frame. 30 days, 3 months, 6 months is a good range to be in. I'm going to distill that down to a decision about what the next target is we will reach. The target, not the actions we're going to take to get to the target. Remember, the decision is not the actions. We make the decision, and then as a natural outcome, just like when we put a frame and a body and wheels and stuff, it naturally becomes a car. The outcome becomes the actions that we take. Now, none of us live from that space 100% of the time. But when that is the case, that is when we feel passion. Passion is a willingness to suffer for things that we love. Results come from passion. Passion drives action and creates our results. If we're not getting the results that we want, we're going to want to revisit the dream, revisit the decisions, and then revisit the results again. If we just want to dive back into the actions, we're going right back into the space of turning on the fan or whatever. With that said, we're not here for an all or nothing mentality. That's what the lower brain wants. The lower brain wants it to be black and white, all or nothing, life or death, fight or flight. That's what it prefers. It's the only two polar levels that it can operate from. So we're not all or nothing in terms of actions becoming the natural outcome. We just want to reach a place where that happens more often, where our actions become a natural outcome of our passion, a natural outcome of our dream. When we're in that space, we're not counting the time or calculating the cost. We're oftentimes it's referred to as we're in flow. When we're in flow, actions become a natural outcome. Sometimes when we look in retrospect, we may feel they were instincts or accidents. They weren't. We tapped into a flow, consciously or unconsciously. We hit this intention driven by our dreams, and our decisions. Some of us have experienced this without ever hearing any of the stuff I'm talking about. That's awesome. A lot of us have these instinctual, these deep processes because we were born to create. And that's the process of creation. To dream it, to make it bigger than you, because why would it be worth creating if it's not bigger than you, if it doesn't improve where we're currently at? And then to make the correct decisions to support it so that the actions become a natural outcome of the results that we're experiencing. Yvette, I was doing that before meeting people, but management at work created such a hostile work environment for me that I look at them with malice and hate. Now I no longer trust who I was. Working slowly at getting back to that. Just can't seem to at work. I love these sessions, being with such amazing people. Yvette, thanks for sharing. Difficult environments. There are principles that we can use for this, but then there are still realities to certain environments. And if we're in really unhealthy ones, we may want to consider a different dream. Be careful, Yvette, and anyone else who's experienced this. Be careful, because oftentimes these kinds of hostile environments can create unhealthy compensations in our habits of thinking, and we'll create a dream to escape from this. And we just put a limitation on the dream, and the point of the dream is to reach limitless, impossible levels, to unleash limitless, impossible levels of passion to support the decisions that we're going to make. So if we're creating a dream to escape, we just built the airplane to fly away, and we're bringing a bomb on it, okay, of our own dreams. We're sabotaging ourselves. So make sure that when you dream, Yvette, it's not an underlying current. And this will be really difficult to do, so please don't take it for granted. Make sure there's not an underlying current of building this dream so you can escape from your hostile work environment. Build the dream for the dream. It'll be one of the hardest things that you do, because naturally our brain thinks, well, if that's what you want, I'm going to cause you to hate what you currently have, because that's its response. If you don't want the bear that's in front of you, run away from it. Okay? That's how fight or flight works. Or fight the crap out of it. And you be hostile too. And you may have found yourself reacting in ways you don't normally react when you've been caught up in that. That's what you want to be really careful about. I wish there was more we could get into on a personal level with that, but based on this current forum, hopefully that's helpful. Co-opetition, love that. Yes, it can be competition and still be happy when others succeed. Commitment to celebrate each other regardless. Changing the thermostat is important, but it is possible to be in the wrong temperature to the point of burning out the thermostat. At what point is that balance important to remove yourself from a specific temperature? Got it. So the burnout of the thermostat typically comes from either trying to change the temperature too fast or completely relying on what you're doing, the external, to change the thermostat. Say that again. The burnout usually comes from trying to change the temperature too fast, which usually feels like unmet expectations, number one cause of self-sabotaging dialogue. Or it comes from being completely focused on the external, the doing, to change the thermostat. Okay? Awesome. We are out of time. Thanks so much for being on today. If you haven't already, please share this out. Get other people on here. Like the Habit Finder page. Follow it so you get notifications when we're on here live. There's going to be some other things coming starting next Monday, I believe. Dave, my father and my business partner, will be doing a Facebook Live every Monday morning. So if you're not following the Mandino page, please do that. There's the Mandino page to honor the Mandino elements of what we do. And there's the Habit Finder page that represents the Institute and the profile and the work that we do. Every Monday morning, Dave's going to be on there for a Facebook Live called Augment Your Week. A little play on words. Augment Your Week. Okay. And then Tuesdays, I'll be on here for the power sessions. Thursday mornings, my father and I, Dave and I, will be back on here Thursday mornings together for some chit chat, just talking about discoveries, questions we've been asking, questions clients have been asking. It'll be really organic. So that should give you something pretty substantive from beginning to end of the week every week. So again, make sure you're following and have liked the Mandino page and the Habit Finder page, so that we can serve you and pour into you as much as possible. Thanks again for being on today. Everybody take care, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next power session. Take care.